All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Applying to Graduate Programs and Funding Your Education session. I wanted to share a brief overview of what we're planning to cover today. But first of all, my name is Shelley Kim, and I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions, Recruitment, and Enrollment. We are so thrilled that you are considering graduate study at UC Berkeley, and we hope this session will help you with your application. So here's a brief overview of what we plan to cover today. We'll discuss how to choose a graduate program, application requirements, and general application tips. Deanne, with our student funding team, will share the different ways you can fund your education. And then the highlight of our session will be the student Q&A panel, where we'll have current students joining us. So as you think of questions, feel free to start putting them into the Q&A for our panelists. We are also recording the session and we'll be sharing the recording after the admissions fair. To get started, I wanted to share a brief timeline of what the admissions process does look like. So 1, start exploring and choosing which program you'd like to apply to right now. Reach out to the departmental staff you're interested in and ask questions to really determine your fit. The application typically opens in September, so start gathering your application materials, requesting letters of recommendation, and then refining your statements. Next, submit your application by the program's deadline. While each application program deadline differs, most deadlines are going to be between December and February. Make sure you're checking with your program and submitting your application on time. And then after you submit your application, the program reviews your application and releases decisions from January through April. And then finally, if you are offered admission, please let us know that you'll be joining us and submit your statement of intent to register. All right, so I'm going to pass it to Carissa to talk about choosing a graduate program.
Hello, everyone. For those in other parts of the world, today is Halloween in the US, hence my attire. We are a fun bunch in admissions, and hopefully we'll get to know you all soon. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the types of graduate programs that are available to you so that you can start narrowing down your search when you're deciding which is the right program for you. When it comes to graduate degrees, there are 2 major categories: doctoral or PhD and master's programs. Masters can be further broken down into academic and professional degrees. Doctoral programs are longer and research focused. They typically require that you have a research mentor with whom you can work closely with over the course of 4 to 7 years. Masters are typically 1 to 2 years in length, and you want to consider your career goals when deciding to pursue an academic or professional degree. For instance, in education, you may choose to pursue a professional degree if your career goal is to become an elementary school teacher. However, if you'd like to pursue educational policy, an academic master's is the better route. One other thing to keep in mind is that not all doctoral programs require a master's prior to entering their program. Be sure you're researching your program of interest and that the doctoral degree, be sure you're researching your program of interest if a doctoral degree is your end goal. Next slide. Okay. So next steps when you're researching is really think about your interests and career goals. Make sure that there's faculty doing research that you can spring your own research off of. Keep in mind, not all specializations of a discipline may be represented at a school. For example, just because a school offers psychology does not mean that they offer clinical psychology. So be sure you're looking at the program and researching, and don't miss that deadline. Plan ahead, ask questions. Don't miss your opportunity by waiting till the last minute. And next, you'll notice that we're talking a lot about researching programs and making sure programs align with your goals. This is what you might be or might hear referred to as fit. and it's truly a vital piece of the graduate experience. You'll be investing your time and money into this endeavor, so you want to make sure that it's the best experience that it can possibly be. Make sure that you're thinking about all the aspects of graduate life and not just if we offer the right degree. Talk to current students about mentoring style and lab culture. Think about the living environment you'll be in, even the weather. Hate cold? Stay away from the East Coast. Do you thrive in a small or bustling environment? So in all seriousness, it's the number one thing I tell prospective students to think about when researching grad school. Don't worry so much about the name of the school. While we do hope that you join us, it's really about the fit.
All right, thank you, Carissa. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the application itself. To submit an application here are the requirements. We have two statements, the statement of purpose and then the personal history statement, which we'll discuss both more in the next slide. We require 3 letters of recommendation, academic transcripts from all post-secondary institutions. Please also submit a degree certificate or translation if your transcript is not in English. The evidence of English language proficiency. So if your undergraduate institution was outside the US and the primary language was not English, you will need to submit a TOEFL or an IELTS score. Please see our website for more information if you have questions on your specific country. Please make sure you're checking the program website to see if there are any program-specific application requirements. This differs, so it might include the GRE or other test scores, additional statements, and more. And then finally, please pay the application fee and submit your application by the program's application deadline. Late applications will not be accepted. So I wanted to go over the prompt of the statement of purpose, which is please describe your aptitude and motivation for graduate study in your area of specialization, including your preparation for this field of study, your academic plans or research interests, and then your future career goals. Please be specific about why UC Berkeley would be a good intellectual fit for you. So for a doctoral or academic master's programs, we wanted to provide some tips. We recommend that you focus on your research goal, how you've prepared to be a strong candidate, and then define fit, as Carissa mentioned. Introduce yourself briefly, share your motivation and what sparked your desire for graduate study. Summarize your previous experience and how you've prepared academically and or professionally. This could include the research you previously conducted, any important papers or thesis projects you've completed, or any relevant work experience. Next, define what your research goal is, define fit, and make sure you have a connection. So what are you interested in conducting research in? Ideally, pose a question, define a problem, or indicate a theme or question that you would like to address. Define your fit by sharing why the university and the department is the perfect place for you to conduct this research, which might include professors that you're interested in or whose research interests parallels yours. And finally, be concise. Your statement should be around 500 to 1,000 well-selected words that really show your self-motivation, your competence, and potential as a graduate student. For professional, if you're applying to a professional program, many of the same tips apply. Instead of defining a research goal, though, you want to clarify your professional goals. So what are your career goals? How are these goals important to you, and how will the program help you achieve these goals? Be specific about the faculty or the courses that you're interested in and how these fit into your career plans. Next is the personal history statement, which is a chance for you to connect with us on a more personal level. It should complement, not duplicate, the content in your statement of purpose. So this is your opportunity to share any experiences that show your promise, initiative, and ability to persevere despite obstacles you faced. If there's something important that happened to you that affected your grades, such as poverty, illness, or excessive work, state it. If you have faced any obstacles or barriers in your education, share those experiences as well. And then finally, some final application tips. Just another reminder, check your departmental website for application requirements, prerequisites for the program, and any frequently asked questions. Reach out to your recommenders early. So letters of recommendation are a way for the admissions committee to hear about how wonderful you are directly from someone who has worked with you. We want to know about your achievements, the impact you've made, your leadership skills, your potential for further growth and success, and more. So approach your potential recommenders right away, schedule a meeting with them, sharing why you're interested in pursuing graduate school and the program specifically. Remind them of your achievements and goals, and then follow up via email with this information. As I stated before, the personal history statement, if there is something that happened to you that affected you and your grades, such as poverty, illness, or excessive work, tell that information. The admissions committee won't know unless you share this with them. And we want to recommend that you write it affirmatively, showing your perseverance despite obstacles. And then finally, write in an active voice. Demonstrate your qualities through examples. All right, and with that, I'm going to pass it to Deanne to discuss how to fund your education as a graduate student.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy that you were able to join us today for this information. We're going to be giving you a lot of information in a very short amount of time. And so just so that you know, the links that we'll be sharing in the presentation will also be dropped in the chat. The rest of my team is on this call as well, and so they're going to be helping answer questions. They're going to be putting information in the chat so that you don't feel like you are missing anything or you have to write anything down. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and get started. The first thing to keep in mind when you are looking at funding your program is how much is it going to cost. And so there are different fee structures depending on your program. So we talked a little bit about the difference between a doctoral and an academic master's. Those are very research heavy focused programs. Professional master's degrees are programs that will further a career along. And that comes with an additional fee. It's called a professional degree supplement tuition. And so just be mindful, there are additional fees that come with different degrees. If you're not a California resident, you may be assessed a non-resident fee. And then we can get into more how those fees can change once you are here a little longer. But just to give you a quick overview is that everybody's fee structure may be different. So I want you all to keep that in mind as we go through the rest of this presentation. Along with your tuition and your fees, you're also going to be given what's called a cost of attendance. Some schools call it a COA. We do here at UC Berkeley. And what a COA is, it's a combined snapshot of what it will look like for you to attend per year. And so not only does it include tuition and fees, but it's also going to include things like room and board and books, personal expenses, and health insurance. That is something that you want to be mindful of when you are thinking about how you would fund your program here. Your program, depending on how long it is, will structure a budget per academic year. For many students, that's a standard 2 semesters. For other programs, it might be 2 semesters and a summer. So your program will sit down and designate how that would be structured with you once that time comes. So now we're going to get into all the kinds of funding that you may have access to and how we're going to meet that total cost of attendance. So the first one that I want to bring to everyone's attention is the FAFSA. And now the FAFSA is an application that U.S. citizens, permanent residents, and eligible non-citizens are eligible to complete. This for graduate students is mainly a tool to get access to loans and work study. However, we encourage graduate students who are eligible to apply for a FAFSA because sometimes that is looked at for other need-based opportunities. For example, we have a couple programs that can offset some health co-payment that can look at other need-based programs within the graduate division that we would look at a FAFSA for. So even though you're not interested in any loans or any work study, we still encourage you to complete a FAFSA if you're eligible to. The FAFSA will open in December of this year, which may be a change from what you're used to if you filed a FAFSA before. But December 2023 is when the FAFSA will open for the 24-25 school year. Next slide, please. Student appointments. We're going to spend a little bit about the time on this. Student appointments are when you as a student are eligible to work through a department, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the department in which you're earning your degree from, but you can be appointed as an instructor, a researcher, tutor, an assistant, a reader. All of those different roles would provide you, number one, a salary to help offset your costs, and number two, a fee remission, which is basically your tuition and fees would be covered. Some fees are not covered, so just I want to be totally transparent with that. Fees such as the I'm supposed to say that some fees are may not be covered, but it's structured based on your cost. So please, when you are closer to coming to Berkeley, there will be more information about how to access open appointments or open opportunities, how to apply for them, and then how to follow up on your application and connecting with the department to talk further about the benefits of a student appointment. So we have fellowships. There's several different kinds. The department is going to be your number one place to go for any funding and support. The graduate division, we have two pretty prestigious doctoral fellowships. One's a chancellor's and one's a Berkeley. Both cover tuition and fees and then provide an annual stipend, which is about $8,000 per semester. You also receive a relocation stipend for $1,000 in early August, so about a month prior to you coming onto campus, to help offset any moving expenses you might have. If you are in a master's program, there is another program for you that that the department would help support, and that's called the Graduate Opportunity Program. That also comes with tuition and a stipend. And if you're looking for any additional support outside of the university, these are the two links that we find to be very helpful. One is called the Scholarship Connection, and that's a really big database of different types of programs that are out there to support students. And then our colleagues at UCLA have developed a scholarship fellowship search. It's called GRADE. And you are able to put in your demographic information and really narrow the focus. So you only receive information on something that you're genuinely interested in, and that might be a fit for you. And we really like to use that one and publicize that one a lot, just because it is a really good tool to use. Next slide. If you are an international student, we want to make sure that you're aware that there is a separate international office that you are able to reach out to. We call it Berkeley International Office, and they are there to help provide support with all things being an international student. But when it comes specifically to funding, they have some tuition and fee support programs, as well as parent support programs that may be able to assist you when you are here at Berkeley. We also have programs for those students who might be parents and who may be caregivers. This is, again, need-based funding. And so when we talked about the FAFSA earlier, that is, even if you're not interested in loans or work study, we do need to see some of that information on the FAFSA to make a decision about parent and caregiver grants. That ranges from $13,000 down to $8,000, depending on the situation. Applications are reviewed in late July, so this isn't something that you would be made aware of prior to you committing to Berkeley, but it is something that is there designed to support you while you are here as a student. And so I just wanted to make sure that you guys grab those links if you feel like this might be applicable to you, because there's a lot of information about the parameters of a parent grant and caregiver grant within our website itself. I also want to highlight that we have a basic needs center on campus to help support you with any emergency basic needs you might be having. So there is support for housing, there is support for food, healthcare and technology is a highlighted basic need. And so we want to make sure that you're aware that once you're here as a student, there are programs that will support you and that can offer you additional resources to match anything that you might need. And that's a very, it's a very robust program. Sometimes they are actually housed in your department itself physically. You know, the basic needs offices will go to your department, but the main hub is in our student union area. So just once you're here, I would encourage you just to check it out. It's a really great program. So sometimes it's hard when you get all this information to understand how it all fits. And so a couple of examples that we want to share with you as to how would it all look for me if I were a student here. So master's funding, this is what it could look like. Master's is generally 1 to 2 years, and you could be put together, your financial aid or your awards and your everything would be put together. It could look like department funding and an appointment and then some loans. So it just kind of depends, but a combination of these programs would help alleviate the cost to you and meet that total cost of education that we were talking about earlier. For students who are here a little longer, and those are mostly the academic students who are working on a PhD, here's an example. So year one, your department might say, we'll support you. Here's their fees award. Here's some living expenses. And we'll provide that for you for year 1 and 2. And then year 3 and 4, we want you to be an instructor for our department. And so it would look like your fees would be covered by your tuition admission, and then you would also have a salary to help cover the rest of your expenses that you might have. And then your last year, it may look again, you want to focus on your dissertation. We're going to provide you some additional department support so that you could focus on writing and getting that dissertation done. It's example, and that might shift, right? So that might shift between, you know, you might receive an academic appointment in year 2 versus year 3 and 4. This is just a small example, but we also want to encourage you to talk to your department and to talk to your advisor so that you're very clear on what your responsibilities are and what their responsibilities are to cover your costs. And don't be afraid to ask your department any question you might have. And if it's not clear to you, we really encourage you to ask them over again. Some additional resources that we want to share with you because there's so much that goes into your program and to funding and different sources of funding. Obviously, we want to direct you to our funding site, and that's going to have information about policy. It's going to have information about appointments, and then also who do you need to contact for questions that you might have. We also want to encourage you and really empower you to talk to your department advisor frequently, just so that you get all of your information from the source, which is most of the time the department. If you're an international student, again, we have the International Student Office that is there to support you. If you are doing anything related to the FAFSA and you have questions about loans or loan repayment or doing a cost of attendance increase or anything that has to do with that particular topic, we encourage you to reach out to financial aid. And then also, if you are an undocumented student and you need some additional resources, we have support also to help you with that. So we have a lot of information depending on what your situation is, and we want to really encourage you to reach out and ask all the questions that you can to help make your decision about Berkeley. And that wraps it up for me. I want to open it up for questions for the student panel. I'm going to mute myself.
So Deanne, before we go into the student panel, I wanted to address one question that I think I didn't address in our application tips portion is that the application fee waiver. So US citizens and eligible permanent residents are eligible for an application fee waiver based on financial need and then program participation. So if that applies to you, then that will automatically show up in your application. If none of that applies to you, we recommend that you reach out to your Department of Interest to ask if they have any application fee waivers available. All right, so with that, this brings us to the main focus of our presentation, the student panel. I'd like all of our student panelists to come on screen and I will spotlight you. And I encourage everyone to take advantage of this time by asking questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. So, of our student panelists, I think I'll ask you to introduce yourself, your undergraduate degree, research professional experience prior to joining Berkeley, what program you're in, and what drew you to Berkeley. That was a lot. So let me know if I need to repeat it too. Amina, do you want to start us off?
Okay, can you all hear me well?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I am a double bear. I did my undergraduate work here at Berkeley at the School of Letters and Sciences, and I did an undergrad degree in area focus of China, Chinese language and study. I also have a master's degree from the London School of Economics. It is a applied economics degree. And I am now currently an MBA third year, about to graduate in May at the School of Business at Haas. And so I guess as far as research and things like that, I have done research at Berkeley. I did some work mostly having to do with kind of economic type studies, specifically internationally focused, discussing issues on China, Chinese culture. And in London, I also did my thesis and things like that on a topic that was basically a comparative type of analysis between the United States and China, doing work with savings versus spending. The work I do now is mostly financial type of, I have an interest in that. And the work I do now as a full-time employee for the Security and Exchange Commission, again, is in finance and kind of a regulatory compliance type field. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like me to touch on, but.
You got it all. Thank you, Amina. Ekta.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. And I'm Ekta, and I'm a part of the development engineering program in UC Berkeley. And prior to that, I was working as a software engineer for some time. And then after that, I was looking for something more meaningful. So I joined a nonprofit based in India and worked there for 2.5 years with one of the UC Berkeley alumna. And she is the one who inspired me to apply to UC Berkeley and be here. So currently, I'm also working as a student associate with one of my professors. And I'm just so glad to see you all here and, asking all of these really wonderful questions. I'm super excited to meet some of you as you apply to Berkeley and come here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ekta. And last but not least, Nate.
Hey, how y'all doing? Nate Tilton, I use he, him pronouns. Yeah, so I did my undergrad at Berkeley. I did my master's at Berkeley, and I'm currently doing my PhD at Berkeley, and all in anthropology. I'm also currently the associate director for the UC Berkeley Disability Lab, where we work at a nexus for disability, media, technologies, and culture in the SF Bay Area. Prior to coming to Berkeley, I was in the US military, and I retired from that and decided to get an application and go in a different direction. And I have been very pleased with the results so far. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today, especially during the lunch hour on Halloween. The question I'm seeing most right now is about a gap year. So after you finished your undergrad, did you have a gap year? between applying to grad school? And then do you have any advice on how to share that in your application as an advantage?
I did actually take a year off in between my moving on to the master's. During that time, I stayed busy. I made sure that I was still involved with a lot of activities and things like that. And so I was able to actually say that I was still active and pursuing things during that time. And in one of my essays, I kind of described that time as kind of a period of growth for me, and that I learned a lot that I wanted to be able to use towards with my time in graduate school. So I basically said that I used the time to become more clear on my focus on what I wanted to do, and that I used the opportunity also to get closer to professors and things like that for my recommendation. So that's something I would recommend as well, using that time for.
Awesome. And then from that, you mentioned letters of recommendation. How did you choose your recommenders? Do you have any advice there on how you approach them?
I can take this. So I had one of my recommenders was also the person I was working with, and she was also a UC Berkeley alumna. And I was asking her, so when I joined the organization that I was working in, I had shared my interest of, applying for masters. And therefore, I asked her a plan of my work as well, that how I can, what would I want by the end of the 2 years of my work there? And that way, I was able to ask her for her feedback constantly. And that really helped. And I asked her to highlight those things in my recommendation when I was applying for masters. So one was that. And the second recommendation letter that I sent was from my workplace. So I mostly had informed these people very early on, and I was constantly in touch with them about my progress and updates. And I think that really helped because they were able to highlight the things that I really wanted in my recommendation letter. Yeah.
So Nate, I know you're the only PhD student on our panel. Can I ask you to also provide your perspective from a research-focused program perspective?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, so as far as a gap year, I mean, I've been around my department for quite a while, and we have several PhD students who have taken gap years. There's students in the master's programs who have taken gap years. I think as long as you can relate your gap year to your research somehow, I think that would be very helpful. Like as Amina said, like relating it to your growth or relating it somehow into what you want to study, I think can be very helpful. And then also with letter of rec writers, it's very important, or I feel it's very important that you definitely talk with professors who could speak to your strengths, or like if you're depending on what field maybe you're in and you want somebody like a boss to write a letter of recommendation for you, that's all well and good as well, as long as they can speak well to your strengths. I think that'd be really important. It also helpful to provide them with the CV, provide them maybe with a body of work, such as maybe a paper that you wrote, or something that can jog their memory if it's been a while since you've seen them. Like maybe it was a paper you wrote for the class, just to remind them, oh, hey, this is what I did in your class. You gave me an A+. Do you think you can maybe speak on this? And sometimes the professors will also prompt themselves, or will prompt you themselves to ask for these type of things, because I know people get nervous asking for letters of rec because it can be a pretty anxiety-inducing experience for some folks. Anything else?
Yes. One other question we're getting a lot is, did you reach out to any faculty members prior to applying? Is there a benefit to that?
Yeah, so that was something that my faculty mentor, Professor Karen Nakamura, recommended I do. And this was when I was an undergrad, because I transferred as a non-traditional student. I transferred to Berkeley, and I did my undergrad here, as I said, and I was fortunate to work with my advisor for so long, and she recommended I do that. And as a first generation college student, non-traditional student, I wasn't really comfortable doing that. And when I applied for my first round of PhDs, I got into one program and no funding. And when I told Dr. Nakamura about this, she said, "Well, did you reach out to people?" And I said, "No, I didn't really feel comfortable doing that." And she said, and that's why you got to reach out to them, because you don't know if these people are accepting new graduate students or not. And if the department may or may not be a good fit for you. So the second round of applications I did what she recommended, and I reached out to potential advisors. Some were taking new grad students, some were not taking new grad students, but all of them were more than willing to help in their own way. Some of them made connections for me and connected me to somebody they thought that would be a really good fit for me to work with, or they recommended some work, some bodies of work, literature that could be useful for me in my academic journey. Uh, Even last year, one of the professors who was not available to work with brought me out to University of North Carolina to do a panel and paid for the trip. So it's also good to get that going for networking as well. But on my second round of PhD applications, I got into quite a few of the programs with quite a few of funding available for me for these programs. So it was definitely a stark contrast from when I didn't do that. But then I would also caution people to look at your department websites and make sure that the department you're looking at is okay with this, because some departments are not okay with this. So I definitely suggest to look before, as they say, look before you leap. Yeah.
Thank you,
Anything else?
Nate.
Yes.
Ekta, Amina, did you want to add to that?
I will say that you definitely want to be cultivating relationships and be very cognizant of really trying to do the networking, like Nate said, because you really want the people who write for you to know you and to know what motivates you and really have a good understanding of why it is you're trying to even apply to these programs. You want them to be able to express that in a way that's very clear and very cogent in their recommendations of you. You don't want somebody that you're kind of like last minute asking and they don't really know you, they don't remember you. You're having to jog their memory of you as a student and tell them what it is that you're trying to do and why you're trying to go to whatever program or school. It's just not going to be the strongest letter of recommendation for you. It kind of seems like common sense, but really taking the time to meet with people and you telling them face to face why you're trying to apply, what it is that you're interested in, as far as the research, as far as the program itself, so that they can really write something strong about you as to why you should be there and be in that program and be able to advocate for you in their letter. So.
Yeah, I would just want to add one little thing to that. So I think a lot of us are very intimidated by the professors and whether we should reach out to them or not, because I was very intimidated. Like, what am I going to ask them? What set of questions can I ask? And if I will look as if I'm stupid and asking silly questions. So first of all, do not hesitate at all, because the professors are very cooperative. If you're not able to speak in front of them, they'll sense the hesitation and they are going to ask about you. So even if you just book a call, just be there in the call and ask genuine questions that you have about the program or the courses that they are teaching. Or in fact, you can ask about their experience, because you're applying to this program to learn more from these professors. So you can just start doing that already. So do not hesitate would be my only advice here, because I hesitated a lot, but in the end, when I did reach out to somebody, it was just super easy than I thought.
Great advice. And it's definitely not too late for anyone who might be worried about the timing right now. Next question that we're getting is, at Berkeley, you can only apply to one program per admission cycle. So for a panelist, how did you choose the program that you applied to? Any advice as prospective students are debating between 2 or 3 programs?
I think for the master's program, I was confused, for example, in my case, between whether I should apply to development engineering or development practice. And then after reading about both the programs and talking to alumni, so I talked to 10 to 15 people just to try to know about their experience of the program and what is it that I really want. And after trying to just merge all the information I got, I realized that I would want something which is shorter, not 2 year long. So it I think in the end, it for me, it depends on what was my preference and where will I get more financial aid, because that was another thing which was very important for me. And what do I want to do after the program? But after a point, I also think that it doesn't make that much of a difference because you have a choice to choose the electives of your choice. So even the core courses might not you might be getting confused with the core courses, but electives is something where you have a choice and you can, be more flexible. So yeah.
I would say for Berkeley has the business school, it's a little different. They have different programs. For me, it was just kind of choosing which one because I'm already working. So it was more, does the executive program fit me, or the evening weekend or something like that. So it was more sitting down with the advisors and things like that and trying to have a better understanding of the focus of the different programs, and then what would make more sense for my lifestyle and for me financially as well. That's always a factor because there's different price ranges between the programs. And then I also was more interested in which one I would be more likely to get some type of funding for. And then with business school, you're really having to be careful with your GMAT scores or GRE scores, whichever one that you choose to submit. So it was me looking and doing the research on historically where my scores would fit in, which program would I be more likely to be admitted to. So it's just being strategic.
Yeah, I think for me, I obviously, I continued the trajectory into anthropology, but there was also times I thought about doing other programs too, such as geography or sociology. And in fact, I did apply to some other programs outside of Berkeley that I got into, such as geography in the UK or at one of the universities in the UK. But I decided to stay with anthropology because it's just where I put my roots at. I swear I sat down and felt it would be the best discipline for me to do and for my research. And also just I felt definitely Berkeley in this case would be the best fit for my family. So that was one of the ways I chose between different programs at Berkeley and outside of Berkeley as well.
Great, thank you. And all three of you have talked about funding your education and how that was such an important factor in your decision. So I guess a lot of our prospective students are asking, how are you funding your education? Do you have any strategies once you were admitted that you would recommend in trying to find those opportunities?
I would say that for funding, you really need to do your research up front. You really have to figure out the timelines for any type of scholarships or any type of fellowships and things like that to be competitive, because you don't, again, want to do anything last minute. You want to be able to put together a very thoughtful package if you are submitting something for a scholarship. For me, I did a combination of getting my job to be able to help pay for some of my program, which was very an arduous process, but it was worth it because we have a reimbursement type of program, but you have to go through all these applications. But again, you have to get up front, get ahead of the scheduling to be able to do that. And then I also received a scholarship. And so I had to research that scholarship and I had to apply. And I was maybe one of 3 people that got that. For business schools, there's very few scholarships that are at the institution. So a lot of them you would have to find outside of the institution. So I know a lot of people in my program that do have scholarships have most likely gotten them outside of the university. And so you can do your research ahead of time to see if there's some kind of program that you are a good fit for, or that you would be able to qualify for. But it's all about timing, because it has to go in at a certain time. And then some of them require you to already be accepted to a program. And so it's just a lot of, you know, figuring that out and really taking the time to think about, you know, how are you going to do this? And if you're okay with splitting up your funding from different paths. For me, I kind of didn't care. It was just getting it wherever I could. So I was just kind of, you know, looking all over the place to get the whole thing paid for. And, you know, with a combination of some loans, some personal expenditures, and the scholarships.
Great advice, Amina. Thank you so much. So I think for me, the funding really mattered because that was a make or break situation for me. I would not have been able to be here without the funding that I got from my department. So I have 3 points to share. First one is creating a solid financial plan for yourself. How much is the fee? How much is the living costs going to be, etc. And making a practical plan and having your options A, B, and C in place. If this plan, I mean, how much will you be able to fund from the education loan or your savings or your parents, etc. So factoring all of that in. And then secondly, after creating this financial plan, second option would be just looking for financial aid opportunities. And Berkeley is the best place to be to look for such opportunities, because here we have so many options to cover our tuition fee, to cover our rent, food expenses, living costs, etc. So I think I got some departmental funding, and I also took this student associate opportunity to cover some part of my fees. Created this plan, and it helped me constantly check off, you know, this much I'm able to cover, and this more of this is left. So again, first one is financial plan. Second one is looking out for all the financial aid opportunities that are available. And trust me, there are just way too many, more than you can think of. The third one is talking to alumni and asking them what all scholarships, fellowships, or external funding opportunities that they apply to. So I did a combination of all of this, and I was able to substantially reduce my tuition fee and living cost for myself. So yeah.
Yeah, this is Nate. Yeah, so I'm a chancellor's fellow, so I have a couple of years of funding by the university, and also that allows me to keep my salary the same range after once I begin GSIing or TAing with professors in classes. Like I'll be TAing or GSIing in the spring, but that's by choice, which allows me to save a semester or two of my funding for later on. Also, I applied for different scholarships, as Ekta and Amina have said as well. Like I applied for the Ford. Unfortunately, I didn't get the Ford. I got an honorable mention, which was nice, but I didn't receive it. And unfortunately, the Ford Foundation's fellowships are going away. I believe last year was their first or last full cohort, unfortunately. And then currently I'm a diversity and community fellow at UC Berkeley, as well as working part-time as an associate director of my lab. So I receive different stipends and different pots of money. And you know, sometimes it's just the professors need help with something, and that's you know, they're more than welcoming to help you ask for help, or if you're looking for more funding in different ways. And I also receive a research stipend, which was one of the things that really was a make or break for me in coming to Berkeley. I had choose between one program here and another program within California as well. And it was really neck and neck until Berkeley offered me a research stipend, which is not typically available to some PhD students. So that's really what kind of broke it for me, since my research takes place in Guam, and that's quite expensive to fly all the way out there. So that covers my costs whenever I fly out to Guam annually to do some research.
Awesome, thank you. And I think what I'm hearing is there are many funding opportunities available. You just have to be proactive and do your research on time to make sure that you can do this. Nate, I have a follow-up question for you. For those of our audience who don't know, will you define what a GSI or a TA is and how that works and what that role is?
Yes, so a GSI is a graduate student instructor and a TA is a teaching assistant. At Berkeley, we have a couple different roles for graduate students in the classroom. One of them could be a GSI or graduate student instructor, a teaching assistant, a graduate student reader, or a reading assistant, as they say. And so a GSI and a TA, they have similar job capacities. Essentially, you'll do grading, you'll be leading sections, right? The professor will teach the main lecture, and then you, as a GSI, will teach what they call a discussion section, which is a lot smaller than lectures. Lectures can be, 100 something students plus, whereas a discussion section is typically 20 or less. And so that's where the students really get their interaction. That's when you, as a graduate student, also have the most impact on your students as well, because, and that's also where you get a lot of your teaching training is in that bubble of being a GSI and a TA, because you often are the one holding office hours, because it can be difficult for the professor to see, over X amount of, sometimes even X amount of 500 students. So it falls on us as the GSIs, or the graduate student instructors, and the TAs, as the teaching assistants, to cover down and teach our students during the discussion sections and office hours. And that's mostly one of the things we do. We also offer our students support as well in those office hours too, because Berkeley can be a very academically difficult place to be at, and sometimes an unfriendly place. But that's where we as graduate students come in and we uphold our undergrads and help them out. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to be mindful of time. We have just a couple minutes before we have to end this session. So I'm sorry that we're not going to get to all of the questions. I do have one final question for our panelists. Do you have any final advice as prospective students are completing their application? Make it good.
Don't do it alone. Take help as much as possible and just reach out to people left, right, and center. The more people you ask, the more it is going to confuse you, but at the same time, you will develop a good sense of what is the right set of advice, and just be able to hone and polish your application more. So reach out to professors, academic advisors, to your friends, family, whoever you can, to tell your story and see and get feedback.
I look at whenever I apply to a program, because I've done a few, I look at my application as one whole thing. I try to have a theme in my brain as to what is it that I want that person or those people, whoever are looking at it, to see and know about me. I want me to jump off the page, I want them to say, I know who Amina is. I know what Amina wants. I know that she belongs here and this program is perfect for her, So I really take a lot of time with really personalizing my entire, application. And I use those every little space to tell something about myself. And, I always go over it and make sure if there's some way to fit some little aspect in there. So, just be very thorough and take your time. Don't do these things. My whole thing is just never do anything at the last minute, because you want to go back and keep reviewing it and keep looking at it and keep working on those essays, because those 500 little words that you have, that's it. That's kind of like all you have to put everything out there. So you want to make sure that you've really taken your time to look at it, and that everything that you want to say about you and your possibility, your dream of going to this school, that it's all stated there. You're not leaving anything out, and that you're talking to people and having them look at it too and saying, does this sound like me? Does this look like me? Is there something that should be stated? Is there something about me that they should know that is not in this application somewhere?
Hey y'all, this is Nate. Yeah, I would definitely say, and this is for anybody, you know, with disabilities who is thinking about applying. Oftentimes in academia, we think we need to hide our disabilities. I would encourage you to say, hey, I am a disabled person as well, and be honest in your application. I know in my experience, I was very honest in my application. I said, this is who I am. I am a disabled person. This is what I'm doing, and this is how I'm going to do it. And just be open and honest. I know a lot of times that can be difficult, but I would definitely encourage you to do that, especially in a place like Berkeley, where it is, you know, where the disability rights movement started. And so just keep that in mind. And as disabled grad students, there are several of us on campus, and we have support groups. And one of the things I'm doing as a disability and community fellow, or excuse me, a diversity and community fellow, is we're creating a disabled grad students accommodations hub, right? And so we're working with DSP and other stakeholders on campus to make, you know, this our campus a lot more disability and accessibility friendly. But that's one of the things I would definitely say, because I've had some people look at my application and say, oh, you shouldn't put your disabilities in here, you shouldn't say anything. I said phooey, because if they don't want me for who I am, then I don't want to be there, right? And because that's going to be one of those things, is that at the end of the day, do you have a place where you're applying at? And I feel definitely at Berkeley you have a place here, as it's a very inclusive space. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, authenticity goes a long way.
Yeah.
All right. So a huge thank you to Amina, Ekta, and Nate for joining us as student panelists today. And a huge thank you to all of our prospective students for joining us and taking time to listen to us. And with that, we wish you the best of luck in your application, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the fair and encourage you to attend more plenary sessions and department sessions. All right. Thank you. Have a happy Halloween.